Well, for the last weeks I've been tying up loose ends in preparation for the loading and, more importantly, the relaunch in Antigua, which requires me to hit the water running, well, sailing. It's 150 miles from St. John's, Antigua to Le Marin, Martinique, which will involve me anchoring for the night behind Guadeloupe, then Dominica, and then finally northern Martinique before heading south into the harbour. More importantly, it's 10 miles round the rock-strewn coast of Antigua from St. John's, where Golden Haze will be splashed, into Jolly Harbour, where I need to buy a courtesy flag and pay for my cruising permit and so on. Earlier this year I purchased a dinghy and an outboard, which I didn't really need in the Channel waters but are essential for the Caribbean. And importantly, I've purchased a long plastic-covered stainless steel cable with swaged eyes at each end and 2 big strong padlocks. One thing is certain, that if you don't chain up your dinghy, outboard and spare fuel can, they'll be stolen, even alongside your boat during the night. I also purchased a 4-man life raft, which I felt I didn't need in Channel waters, but as almost none of the islands have any search and rescue, I felt it was a quite good investment. If you get into trouble out there, nothing is going to happen very quickly, and you're dependent on passing vessels and commercial services, which you're going to have to pay for eventually. This is a good reason for having at least third-party insurance to cover the costs of search and rescue, aircraft tugs and so on. As VH radio, with its 50-mile range, is dependent on having the mast up, I also got an EPIRB as a sort of last resort backup. The system's got a high percentage of false alarms, something like 90%, and a lot of checking is done before the system requires assistance on your behalf. But of course it has a vastly longer range than, say, my handheld VHF, which probably has a range of maybe 10 miles. I'm very aware that everything connected with the boat in the Caribbean is very expensive, simply because it has to be imported from the United States or Europe, and duty has to be paid on its arrival. I need to have a good internet connection for doing stuff like this, and there are data SIM cards available from Orange Carib and others. So I've installed a T-Link data router that runs off 12 volts and will connect to my mobile phone, tablet, laptop, and so on. It's a 4G LTE from T-Link, and it cost me 70 quid. You then need an unlimited data SIM, which seems to cost around £15 a month with no contract, so you only have to use it, you only have to pay for it when you're using it. Actually, with the awful Wi-Fi in many French and English marinas, it's something I think I would have installed anyway. I've got it up and running as a test, and yeah, it seems to work like magic. I'll buy another SIM card with a month's worth of data time on it when I've loaded the boat, so I can get internet for weather data and so on when I arrive. I already have the navionics for the entire Caribbean installed in my plotter, and I've got charts and books from the last time I was there, but that was some 20 years ago. Well, it's enough to find the anchorages I need behind the islands en route from Antigua to Martinique. All my stuff is, of course, very out of date these days, but in those days I didn't have a plotter or Navily, which actually is a very useful app for finding anchorages and marinas. And to support all these electronics, I'm installing a couple of solar panels on the Bimini, 2 by 60 watts, and I've bought an MPPT controller to go with them. Whilst cruising here in the summer, I found I was having to run the motor to charge my batteries every few days when I was on anchor or hanging off a buoy. Hopefully, the Caribbean sun will fuel these 2 panels. The hardest part of this installation has been locating the studs to attach the panels to clip onto the Bimini. Still, I'm sure I'll have solved that problem by the time I get there, I hope. I intend asking Roth Electronics in Cowes to do this installation for me when I get her there. And I have a load of rice and tin food, plus a load of anti-mosquito coils and spray, so I don't need to find shops when I get to Antigua. I'd like to set sail pretty instantly for Martinique. Boat insurance has been very difficult with a lot of paperwork involved. I wanted the boat itself insured, and then I wanted third-party public liability cover in case I crunched some expensive catamaran or even if I got rescued and had to pay for the services. And I wanted this cover to run for 12 months of the year, in the water 12 months of the year. And the company I'm going with are called Offshore Risk Management. It's going to cost 3 times my UK Brest to Elba single-handed cruising area premiums. If I chose to haul the boat for the hurricane season, or better, move her to Trinidad, then the price would have come down considerably. After finding out how much time I will actually be in the Caribbean during the hurricane season, I'll take a view on it for future years. There are 1 or 2 other reputable insurance companies, but Susan Coates, the broker, has a very good reputation. All the insurance companies asked for an in-water survey, thus saving me hauling and launching and so on. Finding a surveyor was challenging. Rather silly responses like it's unethical. The insurance company don't know what they're talking about. But finally I found a surveyor in East Cowes with international experience who'll do it for me when I get her to Yachthaven. I've paid Peters and May the fee for shipping the boat to Antigua. The deal is that if they cannot get enough bookings to their port, they will offer me an alternative, which I can refuse and receive a 100% refund. The alternative would almost certainly be in the Virgin Islands, which are some 400 miles north and west of Martinique, and much of it to windward, and that's a hard trip single-handed. They're very good, Peters and May, at updating me, and things are looking okay for Antigua, so I'm optimistic. But I do have a plan B. Sailing in the Channel in the winter is sometimes problematical, and it's 150 miles from here in Boulogne to Southampton. So I'm moving Golden Haze at the end of September to Cowes Yachthaven Marina, who have very attractive winter rates starting in October, and they're only 10 miles south of Southampton docks. I blocked out 4 days in my diary to move Golden Haze to Cowes, and of course the weather just made a nonsense of that with gales blowing up in the Channel day after day after day. The moment they subsided, I climbed out of the bunk with a forecast of 20 knots and about 20 degrees off the bows, moderating noon to light and variable and a 2 or possibly 3 day window. So, at dawn, I got Golden Haze off her moorings and out of the lock into the basin at Bassin-Napoleon. Under a pretty dismal drizzle, I set off for Eastbourne. I forgot to put the log in, which is a shame. They're making 4 knots, 20 knots of wind on the nose. One of the advantages of Boulogne is the big outer harbour, which gives shelter for recovering warps and fenders before heading out into the Channel. Once clear of the breakwater, it became pretty lumpy as dawn came up, and the wind was not 40 degrees off the bows, and it was pointless to even try setting the main. Nonetheless, I was making 4.5 knots over the ground, helped by the ebb tide also pushing me west. As I entered the very busy shipping lanes, I was called by a slow-moving ship called Nachi Pavlov, who requested I keep well clear of the submarine it was escorting. He wanted me to go round his bows rather than between him and his submarine, who at that stage I couldn't see. And there, through the mist and the rain, I could make out the shape of a submarine running on the surface at about 10 knots. Clearly not a happy son. About 5 minutes later, I heard a voice coming on 16 calling, "Russian submarine, Russian submarine, this is the French warship astern of you." I looked over my shoulder and there was a very, very big warship steaming up channel, clearly French. The British shipping lane was busy and challenging as well, but the good news was the weather forecast was accurate, and around noon the winds eased, rain stopped, and I was able to get some sail up and hasten my arrival to Eastbourne, which welcomed me with blue skies. And for once I was entering around high water, and Sovereign Port Control prepared the lock for me and directed me to a berth. Having parked up, I cleared in with border force, had a meal, climbed into my bunk with my Eberspacher running. Next morning, I fueled up and headed out for Brighton, as the weather forecast predicted gales coming in that night and then for the next 4 days. Brighton Marina, Golden Haze. Do you copy? Over.
Last station, Boulogne, Brighton. Just the Brighton Marina. Go ahead, sir.
Brighton Marina, this is Golden Haze. Good afternoon. Would you have a berth for me for 4 or 5 nights? I'm a 10-metre sailing boat.
Golden Haze, Brighton Marina. Yes, I can accommodate you for that, sir. If you can just stand by on this channel, and I'll get back to you with berthing instructions. Over.
Yeah, roger that. Thank you, Brighton. Standing by at 8. I was allocated an inside berth in the middle of the marina, which suited me fine, knowing the strong westerlies were coming in. I parked up between 2 delightful liveaboard boats, both of whom made me feel very welcome during my short stay. The pontoon was a bit short for Golden Haze, but with plenty of cleats, so it worked out fine, and she was easy to secure well for the incoming weather. My stepson and daughter live in Brighton, so I usefully spent time with them and with my sister, who lives nearby. Frustrating to be stormbound for so long, but good to spend time with the family. Dawn of day 5 saw me heading out of Brighton. Okay, after sitting in Brighton for 4 days with gales, it's now really cold, and I'm heading out towards the Loo Channel and Cowes on the penultimate leg of this delivery to Southampton. My intention is to get to Cowes, park up in Cowes Yachthaven, who've done me a really good deal at their winter rates, and then just before loading in Southampton, take the boat up to somewhere in Southampton water for a couple of nights. So yeah, that's it. It's on the nose, of course. Got about 15 knots on the nose. I'm motor sailing. I've got the jib out and the main up, and I'm heading west. And it's cold, really cold. I had the tide with me through the Loo, producing almost 7 knots over the ground, and around noon the sun came out and the rest of the 47-mile passage was pleasant with blue skies and a bit of wind to sail by. It's now 5:10. I told them I'd been in between 5 and 6. Little channel.
Golden Haze, Cowes, are you receiving? Over.
Yeah, Cowes, copy that, go ahead.
Golden Haze, can you inform your length, sir, your total length? Over.
10 meters, over.
Receive, stand by. Golden Haze. If you take the outside breakwater, towards the southern end. The southern end, please, sir. Dive as close as you can to the boat in front.
Cheers. Made it to Cowes. Sat in Brighton for 4 days with weather going through. Even when it was pretty calm, it was still 20 knots on the nose, which, you know, the diesel engine is hopeless. Anyway, left the marina at 07:30. Was going out through the entrance at 8 o'clock, and I got in here to Cowes at 5:30. They've got 3 or 4 Cowes Yachthaven Marina. I'm on the outside berth, as you can see, just for tonight, because they've got 3 rallies in, and the whole place is absolutely chock-a-block. I mean, it's amazing how many people sail in the winter in the Solent. I'm duly impressed. Mind you, it's a lovely day. Once I got through the Loo Channel, the sun was shining. It was really, really nice. I'm just about to write my logbook, which will comprise of left Brighton 7:30, got into Cowes 1700, 17:15. And that's it, really. That's the end of this first stage of getting her to Antigua. I'm going to move the berth tomorrow midday when all the rallies have gone. They're going to move me around to the inside residence area of Yachthaven, which will be lovely. I'll see Roth Electronics to get them to sort out the connections to my solar panels, get the survey done by Mark Harrison, I think it is, who lives just across on the other side of the river, and that's it. I think this is the end of this part of the diary. The next episode will be loading onto the ship and unloading in the Caribbean. Can't be bad, can it? Cheers to that. Bye now. This underwater drone was waiting for me when I got home, sent by nice Chinese people at Power Vision for me to review. Could be an answer to checking the underwater problems without a wetsuit and for seeing if the anchor is dug in properly. I'm taking it down to the marina to play with my friends. At my website, gentlesailing.com, you can find my books about sailing and boats. French Canal routes to the Mediterranean has sold over 3,000 copies, and the Gentle Sailing route to the Med, down the Atlantic coast without having to spend a night at sea, has sold over 2,700 copies. The Atlantic Crossing Guide, which I published last year, is being downloaded in amazing numbers, I'm really pleased to say. They're all instant PDF downloads, and there's a link to a UK website that can turn them into printed books for around £5 if that's what you prefer. Gentlesailing.com. About a dozen books there, including guides to the Caribbean and crossing the Pacific. Fair winds.